They're all saved in the database. Couple of key things here. I'm just going to click on this particular one that I've attached. I can go into some details about this. I've set this one to flow, which means this attachment will flow down to documents, transactions for the customer. At the bottom, I've also said send attachments in email. So for every attachment, I can control these features. You can also predefine different attributes if you want, so that you can put some more information about that attachment. Like document, maybe if this was a contract, I could say contract, those sorts of things. So now what we'll do is we will take a look at a transaction. I've already created one, but if I were to create a new one for this customer, whether it's a quote or an order or an invoice, you will see at the top here that there's already a document attached. And it's the one that I attached to the customer, which flowed in automatically because I had it set that way. I've also added another attachment that's specific to this transaction. And each of those I can control the options again at that level, whether I want it to go in an email if I'm emailing my invoices and so on. There's also options in the setup to allow deleting attachments, or you have to have a password to delete, those sorts of things. Next, PSTL, which is short for Professional Services Tools Library. Anybody ever heard of this? Anybody use this? Nobody? You use it? Okay. It's a set of tools that complement GP, set of tools, and we're going to get into some of them today, such as modifying, combining GL accounts. Have you ever had the question, oh, I need to revamp my GL accounts. I need to change the numbering a bit. Or I have two accounts that really should be combined into one. Those sorts of things are available to you through the PSTL, the tools library. Other things such as copy shortcuts. If you have a number of shortcuts for a user that's set up because they are user account specific in GP, there's a utility that says copy all these shortcuts from user A and copy them to user B. Can be very handy. Especially if you bring somebody new on board and you want them to have the same things as another person that's using the system. Date verify. You're entering a payables document, you accidentally type in the year of 2090 or something, and it doesn't catch that. You can turn on a document date verify, so now it'll tell you that there's no fiscal period set up for this. So a little more control around those things. Other things like copy company. We have a company set up, we want another one set up that has the same GL accounts, maybe the same vendors, same customers, those sorts of things. These tools are typically used by an administrator. And let's take a look at a couple here. It's a separate install, and if it is installed on your system, it's available on the navigation bar on the side. And I'll just point out a few key things in here. First of all, navigation, for those of you that are going to use this, you can see that there's little kind of circle buttons and there's some squares. The ones with squares means it's something you turn on, and later you could turn it off. But you turn it on and that's it, you're done. And then that feature is now available within GP. For the other ones, that would mean that the utility, the thing that you do, is right within this tool. You hit next, it takes you to that window, and so on. So I've talked about a couple of these already. A couple key ones I'll just point out. Master triggers. This is available for GL accounts, vendors, and customers. If you have a need to have from one company, when you create a new customer, you automatically want it created in other companies, GP companies, you can turn this on. And what'll happen is every time you add a new customer, it'll flow to those other ones. If you update that customer, it'll update, well, really it overwrites the customer setup in the other companies. So it rewrites all the information. Can be very handy. Things like inventory site modifier, or let's say account modifier. I have account number 1011, I want it to be called 1012 now. And it'll roll through all the transactional data, all the history, and it'll make the changes. Same with things like customer name, vendor name. You can have that roll through all the posted transactions automatically. So a number of neat features there. All right, next we're going to talk about the web client. How many have heard about the web client for GP? Anybody here? Couple of you? The web client is fairly new. It's the reason it exists really is to be able to deliver GP to users without having to install in their workstations, or have a terminal server or Citrix server set up with it running, and so on. It works, it delivers GP, the application, through a website, so through a browser. Recently, they've now made this cross-platform, so you can run it on an Android tablet, an Apple tablet, those sort of things. Even a phone. You probably don't want to do data entry on a phone screen. I've tried it. It just doesn't work very well. But if you have to go in and look at it, a few things, do some inquiries, it's probably okay for that. The tablet seems to work pretty good. And it works just a little bit different than GP, but it looks pretty much the same as the regular application that you use today. And it uses domain accounts to authenticate. So you don't use your GP login, it uses your Windows login for the web client. Just a couple of requirements I'll make note of here. It does require that there's a server or maybe multiple servers, depending on the size of your organization, that have web components and session server components. Also has the application installed on one of the servers. Requires a Windows domain. You can see here it supports Internet Explorer, Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and so forth. All right, we'll just back up. Let's have a quick look at the web client. I've already gone to the web address for my web client install, and I'm going to sign in with my Windows account. But I just did something which somebody's going to ask about, I'm sure of it. I'm logged into the desktop application right now with my account, and I wanted to go log into the web client. It knows the connection or the link on your account setup in GP. That's why I just exited the desktop client. Anyways, here you see this is GP on the web, you may as well say, with the web client. Looks very similar. This is the home page. You can go through the different series and you can see the different menu panes and so on, just like you're used to. One of the key differences in here is there's a search. You don't have to know exactly where a particular function is. So if you don't know how to get to payables transaction entry, you can just start typing it. And it brings up a suggested list in the bottom window here, and you can just click and open that window. And so on. Another key thing in here for navigation is on some windows that where you have little blue arrows to expand, some of those windows will actually have separate tabs at the top, those sorts of things. Also, if you have multiple windows open in the web client, they will all show in the open windows section here, and then you can just flip between them. So the web client can be very useful if you do want to deliver from an infrastructure perspective to the users through the web client rather than separate desktop installs. It can be very handy if you have sessions or something that you need to leave running, maybe a big report or a big posting of a batch. You could start it in your web client session, close your browser, and come back and reconnect to the same session and continue on. So very useful for those sorts of things. It can be used in your office at your desk. It can be used basically from anywhere as long as you have that connection back into your office. I think what we'll do now is I'm going to ask, is that you, Renee? Yeah. Analytical accounting? Okay. Sorry, man.
A few things I'm going to get into. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about analytical accounting. We have a number of clients who are using it, but some, if you don't know about it, it is a great way to extend your general ledger. So if you're using GP and you have some GL accounts that you want to extend, and you say you want to track maybe projects or something, internal projects on a GL account, analytical accounting is a great way to extend your GL without having to add new codes or add a new segment to your general ledger. So it's essentially a virtual segment that you could add to your general ledger. There's a lot of functionality that you can or cannot use with it, but one neat feature is you can set up security to it too. So you can set up so only certain users can enter some codes and other users can enter other codes. So I'm just going to get into that one. And let's just jump into GP here. So essentially the way that the tool works is you have what they call transaction dimensions. And in this case, I have two simple transaction dimensions. I got grants and I got projects. For now, I'll just use projects as my dimension, and then I define the codes that I want to code to in my projects. So I got projects. Here are the 3 different codes that I want to be able to select when I enter a project. Once you do that, the next key piece is you have to link your projects to GL accounts. So essentially what this does is this is the piece that says these GL accounts that are here, anytime I code to any of these specific GL accounts, the system is going to prompt me to enter a project. So in this case, let's just use one of my ones here, 000-6800-01. So let's go in and enter a payable transaction. So I'm going to do a quick payable transaction, and we're going to use Ace Travel for $100. And 0-6800. Oh, 01. All right. 01. And as soon as I do that, you might have noticed this little icon pops up saying that analytical accounting is available. There is another similar tool that I'm not going to talk about today called MDA, which is multi-dimensional analysis, which is a very similar tool which works with Wensoft. Analytical accounting doesn't work with Wensoft, so that's one of the identifiers to identify whether or not you use the function. But basically, now that I selected a code that is specific to analytical or a project for analytical accounting, I can go ahead and let's say I want to split the cost, my $100. I want to say that $100 I want to send 25% to one project, 75% to another project. I can play around with the percentages here to split it, but this case I'm just going to be simple and just code it to 100% to safety. When you start doing this, these analytical accounting codes become available in Management Reporter as simply as another dimension, or sorry, another GL account if you so desire to use that function of Management Reporter. But it gives you a lot of reporting capabilities with this tool. All right, close a couple windows. And yeah, that's the gist of it. There's a lot more that it does, but that's the, all right.
One question.
Yes.
Is it available in the finance cube?
Yes. Sorry, it has its own cube. So there's a separate analytical accounting cube that becomes available that you can use if you.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So the question is, is AA available? AA stands for analytical accounting. Is it available in the finance cubes? And it is available in a cube, but not the financial cube. It's its own analytical accounting cube, but it is available. And we will be talking about the cubes, which are analysis services cubes in our reporting section, so we'll extend that a little bit more. All right. Next piece is grant management. Grant management may be a little bit more applicable to the not-for-profits, anybody who really tracks grants, but some of the things that I like about grant management is it does give you some, if you're using analytical accounting and you want to track some of the information about a specific dimension, grant management might be a way to do it. And I'll cover the screens, but it is a handy tool. Some of the features with grant management is it allows you to incorporate your budgets right into that dimension. So if you have a budget and you want to set up your budget for a grant, you can do that well in here. And you can also set up your budgets. Like quite often a grant might not align with your fiscal calendar. The budgets for the grants can, as long as they align with the grant, that's the most important, like the dates on the budget, as long as the budget dates align with the grant, that's the most important part. It can be outside of your own fiscal calendar. You can also track the sources where the funds are coming from for the grant. So there too, if you can basically say I'm getting $50,000 from this source, $50,000 from this source, and gives you that capability to track it. So we'll just quickly jump into there. So if I added it to my home page just for simplicity purposes. So here I have essentially what I have done here is I've set up my grant to use the grant transaction dimension. So you know how when I set up my AA, I had grants and I had projects. So this is my grant dimension, and it's linked up then in the future for all of my grants. So I have this energy efficiency grant. It starts on January 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2017. One of the things I really like about it is if you bring in your budgets for this grant, or essentially for this grant, then you can start alerting users to say, hey, you're coming up to your budget, you're almost at your budget, you're exceeding your budget for the grant. So it does give you that link to actually tell the users as they're entering transactions how they're doing against the grant, and is there money available for them to actually enter those expenses. So for example, you might have an expense, it's like I'm going to use the rest of this grant, and then I got to allocate the rest to another account that's not grant specific. So this will give you that capability. And then here's the section where you can say my grant is for $100,000, and then you can say where the money is coming from. So it gives you that capability to track the sources of your grant. And here too, because it's linked to analytical accounting, gives you that extra level of reporting right in your management report or reports to easily track where you're spending your money. All right. Encumbrance management there's some similarities with encumbrance management with grant management, but the key here is the ability for you to track when you're budgeting, you're uploading your budgets into GP. Encumbrance management is the functionality that allows you to allows you to link your purchase orders. So when you issue purchase orders against expense accounts that you have a budget for, the encumbrance management will encumber your outstanding purchase orders to not allow you to spend over what your budgets are for for those specific GL accounts. So the key here is you have budgets and you want to prevent people from exceeding budget, or you want to at least warn people when they're going to exceed their budgets. before the expenses actually happen. So when you're entering the purchase order, not when you get the invoice from your vendor. So I'll just show you the setup screen on what that looks like, because there's a couple features within the encumbrance that is useful. Better save that. Oh, no, we want to delete that. Wrong window. So if I go in my encumbrance setup screen, and encumbrance really is, you set it up, there's one screen to set it up, and then you just let it do its thing. So when I enable my encumbrance management, I have an option: am I going to do the encumbrance against a general ledger budget, or am I going to do it against a analytical accounting budget, or against my grant budgets? So you have to identify where the budgets are coming from. And then am I going against the total budget? So the total budget for the entire year, or do I want to do this on a period by period basis, or a budget to date basis, or a fiscal year basis? So there's different options on how you want to encumber those funds, or how you want to warn the users that they're going to exceed their budgets. And other two options is a password. So if you are going to exceed it, but you want to allow them to exceed it with a password, you enter a password here, and that gives them the ability to exceed it. And then finally is a tolerance. So you can have a tolerance level. So maybe within, you can have the tolerance set to 5% over, 5% under, using this kind of function. No, I don't want to save it because I don't have any budgets. Workflows 2.0. Workflows is a function that really, I'm going to say it came in GP 2015. They had workflows prior to that worked in SharePoint, but they did not work near as well as I find the current workflows work. Essentially what it is it's an approval process for creating master records or updating master records, posting batches, entering transactions, and posting transactions. So you can create a workflow that requires someone to approve the transaction batch or create of a record based on certain criteria of whatever it is that they're entering. It is integrated with Active Directory, so it's if you say my approver is this person, it's not their GP user, it's their Active Directory user. And where that is very useful is if you set it up, it'll email the approval to the manager who needs to approve it, and they can just press the approve button right in the email. You don't need to log into GP to do the approval. You can using web services, it'll communicate back to GP, and it'll mark that transaction record or batch or whatever as being approved, so then the user can carry on, as long as they're within your domain or within the network, because it needs to communicate back to GP within that email. And finally, full history of the visibilities. One thing I really like about it is historical transactions that have gone through the approval process. You have the visibility on who entered it, who approved it, who posted it. So you got that visibility, which I wish it was a lot more available without workflows, but this is a way to get additional visibility in who's entering transactions and approving them or making changes to them. I've had a lot of support requests or where someone says, someone updated this field on my customer master record. Who did it? And it's like, well, I can look at without turning on auditing, I can see who might have last saved it, but someone else might have saved it. I don't know what they've changed. This gives you a bit more visibility with that. So I'll just show you that screen. So it is something that is installed by default and just needs to be set up. And essentially, when you go to the workflow maintenance window, there's workflows available for all these modules. So GL, AR, AP. When we say payroll, that's not Canadian payroll, sorry, that's US payroll. project accounting, and even some administration, which is just a smart list designer approval. But I'll just go to purchasing for an example, and here I have a purchase order approval workflow where any PO that's over $1,000, I have it set to, I'm gonna click this little plus. Anything that's set over $1,000, it gets sent to Bob CRM or myself. So there's different things that you can do with that on who it goes to, and you can have multiple levels if you desire as well. So what does that look like when you actually open it up in the PO? I'll quickly open a PO that has it. I'm just going to do a quick cheat here. Open up my last one. So here it says the check amount is pending approval by 2 approvers right now. It's due, so someone already went into this PO. Right now, if I go to actions, there is no way for me to email this PO or print this PO because it hasn't been approved yet. So it is essentially a pending PO until it gets approved. Once it's approved, then you can send the PO to your vendor for fulfillment or whatever. So if I go to my view history, here's my view. I can see that it originated and actually it got rejected, and then it got resubmitted, it got rejected, and now it's just sitting here pending to be approved. And at that point, I can go ahead and approve it, reject it, or delegate it. Delegate it means I don't want to approve it. I want to send it out to someone else to approve it, and that gives me the ability to have someone else approve it. And due to time constraints, I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll let Terry take over from here. Uh-oh.
Which VM is it that you have GP open in, Renee? Hi. Okay, so I am going to talk about a few things this morning as well. With fixed assets, I'm going to keep it at a pretty high level because it's a full module in GP, and we could probably spend the whole day talking about it, so I'm just going to do a very, very high level introduction on it. So fixed assets in GP is pretty easy to use. One of the nice things about it as well is that it does integrate to both accounts payable and to purchasing. So any transactions that people are entering directly in where you went out and bought an asset, you can keep your purchasing process the same as it is. And then in accounts or in fixed assets, there's a link there that grabs all that information that's already been entered as far as acquisition cost, who the vendor is, all of that information. It just easily integrates directly into fixed assets. It also links to analytical accounting now in the latest version. So Renee talked a bit about projects. So perhaps there's an asset that you have either purchased or you're using specifically on one project. We can now link that information in, so either the cost or the depreciation or any transactions regarding that asset can be costed directly to that project via the analytical accounting link. So fixed assets in GP also has multiple depreciation methods. So if you do have assets that you're depreciating in different ways, some are straight lines, some are declining balance, whatever it may be, there are multiple different methods that can be used for different assets or classes of assets. You can also track the location and the custodian of assets. So that may assist you in any kind of facility management. So we have all of these assets in our organization, and our organization spans different physical locations and offices. So you can track who's responsible for that asset and where that asset is. So it may aid you in some facility management there. There's a number of user-defined fields that you're able to track. So if there's additional information that you can't capture in the fields that exist on the assets themselves, there's a number of different fields that you can add more information specific to your organization. There's also a nice mass import tool available. So some of you may be tracking assets in another in an external, tracking assets externally, and you may want to continue doing that. But perhaps you want to import that information into GP as well, simply for depreciation management or, to assist in facility management. There is a mass import tool that's fairly easy to use as well. There's a number of reports and a number of smart lists as well that are available for those fixed assets. So I'm just going to slip into, oops, Renee, which VM do you have available that you had open? Because there was two.
Yeah, mine, just hit Alt-Tab,
Alt tab, okay,
and mine is that one.
that one.
Yeah.
Perfect,
Yeah,
thank
just
you.
minimize Excel.
Okay, awesome. So in fixed assets, again, I could spend quite a lot of time. I just want to show you a few windows so that you get some exposure and can see some of the information available. So it is an additional install on GP. It's on the install media as an additional module. But once it's installed, it's found within the financial area of GP. So for fixed assets, I'm just going to open up the general window and I'm going to talk about a few things there. So as I mentioned, there is the ability to link directly into purchases that may have happened. So if a transaction has already occurred, you've went out and bought an asset and now you want to set it up for depreciation, there is an easy link that brings in all of the information that was already set up. So it's brought in the acquisition cost. By drilling in there, I can see, who that, all of the additional information about that. I can drill in and see who the vendor was. So all of that purchasing information is also tracked directly against that asset. We talked a little bit about the ability to have multiple depreciation methods. Let me just grab an existing asset here. So I have a shortcut here where I can scroll through to different information on the actual depreciation, et cetera, on this asset. So, there's many different types of depreciation methods that are available to you. So that can be set up both on individual assets, and you can also assign that at a group level. So if there's a group of one group of assets that uses straight line, there's another one that maybe you use declining balance on, you can set that up as default so that flows down automatically. It's pretty easy to drill in and see all of the transactions that have happened into your general ledger as well. And as I mentioned, there is a link here to analytical accounting. So if I chose, I could assign this asset to a project, and then all of the transactions, all of the general ledger transactions that occur after that would be recorded against that project as well. Okay. We also have an area in Smart List specifically to fixed assets where you can report on the information using the Smart List tool and send that information out to Excel. Okay, so again, I am keeping it pretty high level, just more of an exposure. Okay, and where am I going here?
Just minimize the demo.
Thank you. Thank you. Another item that is available to all users that comes with Core GP is an item called Revenue and Expense Deferrals, and it is an additional install, but it is free with the Core GP. Is anybody here using it or has heard of it before? It's quite a slick little easy tool to use. And basically what it does is it allows you to defer either expenses or your revenue across multiple periods in an easy fashion. You don't have to say, okay, I'm going to set up a recurring batch and once a month I have to remember to go post it. You can either directly at the time of entering transactions indicate how you want to defer these transactions so that they post across multiple periods. You can also do it retroactively. So for example, if an accounts payable transaction was entered against prepaid expenses and you decide after the fact, okay, well I want to be able to record this expense to the appropriate account over 12 months, you can access that posted transaction and do a deferral for it. The entries that can be made using this module are, you can do it in GL, you can do it in receivables, payables. It works both in sales order processing, purchase order processing, and in invoicing if anyone's using that. As I mentioned, the deferrals can be done both at the time of entry and it can be done retroactively. Another item that you can do there is that you can choose to have these entries automatically post into future closed periods and or future or prior closed periods, but it is an option that you can select. So I'll go into, find my, find. It's this one, I believe. Okay. So again, in the financial area, there is a selection here for financial deferrals. So in the financial deferrals, that's basically just a GL entry that you can do. You can also, as I mentioned, go through and do some retroactive deferrals. So I'm just going to go to the retroactive deferral. And I'm going to, I have one set up here that I will track down. And it is, so it lists all of the documents that have been recorded for this vendor. I can just simply drill into one after I select my batch ID. Okay. At the top of the window, you'll see this additional button. So one of the options under here now is deferral. So I have this set up earlier. I said that this transaction is going to be is for an entire year. So I've entered in the start period, the end period. I can choose how I want to defer this. Do I want to do it by days? Do I want to do it an equal amount per period or a miscellaneous amount? So I'm just going to take a look at this. So this, by doing this and calculating it out, I've then just indicated that I want this transaction to go across the 12 periods that I've selected, an equal amount per period. And basically what I'm doing then is just taking it from a prepaid account and moving it to the actual expenses that I want to record. Even if a period is closed in the future, it will actually post if you have that allowance set up. So again, instead of trying to either just record it and then remember to go do a journal entry, have a recurring batch that's set up that you have to go and make sure that the amounts are set up correctly and post each period, this is just a way of controlling it once with one document. So it's pretty slick. Yeah. Okay. And okay, I just included a screenshot for the actual GL transaction that can be done as well. The last one on the list for me is navigation lists. Navigation lists have been in GP for quite a few years, but I really have not encountered a lot of people that are using them actively. And it can be a really great way to start out in GP, look at information and kind of move around the system without having to remember which window you need to go to, which area it is. So they are set up for each functional area in GP, and they're options specific to those modules that you're talking about. So as I said, it can be used as a good starting point. Maybe you want to search out a customer, and then once you've found that customer, you want to see all of their transactions. Maybe you want to put the customer on hold. There's all kinds of different options you can do right from that one starting point. It's really process-oriented rather than just menu-oriented. Renee just talked about workflows. Navigation lists are often used in conjunction with workflows as well. So the approvals, you may have a navigation list of all your vendors. Then under that, you might have an option if you've got a workflow set up for vendor approvals. You might have a navigation list there of all of the vendors that are awaiting approval. One of the actions there might be to approve. So they're used in conjunction with that as well. On these workflows or these navigation lists, there's different actions that can be done. There's modify, etc. And I'll go through and show you some of those. And they can also now be modified to meet a specific business needs. So there's core ones out of the box, but similar to smart lists, you can do some modifications or customizations and save those to meet a specific business need. And I'm just going to go into GP and I'll show you an example of one that I created earlier. And, okay, I'll close this. Oh. Okay. So when you go to your different navigation areas, people usually go, I'm in financial, and they immediately look at the navigation pane where all of the different menu options are. People don't often necessarily pay attention to the items that are available here along the left-hand side. These are your navigation lists that are available. I'm actually going to go to Sales, and I'm going to take a look at Customers. Okay, sometimes it'll take a little bit to load if you haven't loaded it before, so you'll have to be patient here. So this is giving me a list of all of the customers that are available in this system. I do have some options on filtering up here. I could say, well, I want to exclude inactive customers. I only want to see my active customers. We also have some analytics that are available here as well for each of these customers. So this one is showing a receivables aging. It's probably a little small. You might not be able to see that well, but that's available there. So as you can see, with these items, if I select a particular customer, I do end up with some additional options available at the time. So I could say for this particular customer, I want to go see if there's any sales documents that need to be applied. I can do that. I can apply a hold from here. I can, under the new option, I can say, well, I need to do a new order or a new payment. So there's all kinds of ways for you to start at this particular place and move around the system to do certain transactions for that area. You'll see below this as well, you can see additional information for that particular customer. So I see Aaron Fitz Electrical, but below there's a drill-in option. I can go directly to the customer card. I can also see information like their balance and their credit limit. So this is an out-of-the-box one that's giving you some high-level information and some more detailed information below on each of these customers. I also, ahead of time, went and I created a custom one. So in this particular one, what I did was I created a list with the customers with their current balance and their credit limit. That's available just with a customize option here, a save as, and then you can do your own customizations. So in this particular one, I see all of my customers, I see their current balance, and again, I have all of those options available. So, it may be that I want to take a look at this particular customer. I can see that they owe $20,000, their credit limit's $40,000, but it's all, very old. I can maybe print a statement from here. I've got their phone number. I could get on the phone and give them a call if they, apply a hold if they aren't willing to give me some money, etc. So, and this is created for a very specific example. There are also some really nice options for filtering and searching here, and you can send this information to Excel as well. It's similar to a smart list. Like with the filters, doing your searches, if you are using some of just the basic inquiry windows, if you want to find a customer that's Adam Park, if you don't start it with Adam, if you just type in Park, you're not going to find that customer. This is a much more advanced search feature, so I could type in Park and it will find any customer that has Park in their name, Park in their address, anything to do with those customer records. This search functionality will work. You can apply filters, so if I want to see, I want to find all of my customers that, are in Edmonton, in Leduc. So you can apply these filters as well and really refine this search functionality. You can also do actions for multiple customers at once. So if you wanted to print statements, if you wanted to apply a hold, you can do these items for multiple customers at once. So it's a way that you can do some mass functionality rather than going through in your customer screen one by one, adding in an email or, that type of thing. So I was trying to keep that short, so I will close there, and I guess we did say that if there were any questions that we wanted them at the end. So are there questions for any of the three areas that we discussed?
Well, what I would just suggest is over lunch, so lunch is very much open. There's, all of the consultants are here to, have lunch with. So if you have further questions, more specifics, what have you, grab them at lunchtime and ask them some questions. Okay?
Rick, we're not at lunch yet. We have another session first.
I realize that.
Okay.
I'm just saying about questions.
Okay.
All right?
Sure.
Okay. So,
Thanks, guys. Andrew, which